Hey everyone, so today we're going to be talking about the Australia squad update that happened over this weekend ahead of the South Africa's versus Australia series. So that's what the show is going to be about. I'm going to read you a couple of articles about the Australia squad that have been published on various platforms in Australia as well as on Sky Sports News, just to get us some of an understanding into the thinking of the Australians and how they're going to be preparing for this particular white ball series. I also want to get some of your comments and see what you guys have to say about the series. We will be doing a couple of videos leading up to the series, of course, this week, and give you guys opportunities to maybe pick your ODI, T20 sides, etc. And we'll discuss different ways and maybe approaches going into this particular series. But before we get going, before we get started, please can you subscribe to this channel? We're on the route to 4,000 subscribers at the moment. We're nearly there, so please go ahead and subscribe and click that notification bell for all future videos. Help me get there so that we can do so. And then also, I'd like you guys to please download the latest issue of Cricket Fanatics magazine monthly. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every single month. The link is right now on your screen and as well as in the description as well. So please go ahead and do so right now. And smash a like on the video because that really helps us with regards to the spread of this video. So please go ahead and like the video. That's also free. So just go ahead and smash that like button if you guys have the opportunity to do so. So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. We are back with another daily show. Very good evening. Welcome to Cricket Fanatics magazine. This is your daily show. I'm your host, Khalid Mohideen. And today, this is the show that we talk about all the major talking points in South African cricket. And today, specifically, we are going to be looking at the Australia side of things. And I'm going to discuss a squad update that happened recently regarding the South Africa tour and Australia. So let's get straight into today's first article that I want to share with you guys. It has to do with, it is from Sky Sports News. Because I picked this particular one because they actually have the squad within the story as well. So it helps us also get a nice look at everything as a whole. So Steve Smith and Mitchell Starc are expected to be fit for the World Cup despite being ruled out of Australia's upcoming white ball series in South Africa. This is obviously on Sky Sports, so I just want to make sure that you guys see that, and it was posted on Friday as well, 11 o'clock in the morning in the UK. Batter Smith has a wrist injury and left arm paceman Starc has a groin injury. Will miss a tour against the Proteas, which comprises 3 T20 internationals and 5 one-day internationals after picking up injuries during the drawn Ashes series in England. After the South Africa series, Australia will play India in the 3 one-day internationals on September 22nd, 24th, and 27th, before facing Rohit Sharma's team again in their World Cup opener in Chennai on the 8th of October. Australia Chief Selector George Bailey said the compacted Ashes series and the World Test Championship was a heavy fold for the group, and we are taking a conservative approach to the build-up to the World Cup. For the World Cup, the priority of the squad, it was determined on advice that it was best for Steve and Mitchell to join the group in India, by which time we expect them to be fully fit and available for the Indian ODI series plus the World Cup warm-up fixtures. Captain Pat Cummins' wrist injury was already ruled out of the South Africa trip, with all-rounder Mitch Marsh to lead the side in his absence. Modest Labuschagne, who has been left out of Australia's World Cup squad, is added to the South African tour in Smith's absence, while left arm quick Spencer Johnson could make his international debuts in both white ball formats. Here are the Australian squads for South Africa series. In the T20 internationals, Mitchell Marsh will be captain, Sean Abbott is here, Jason Berendorf, Tim David, Nathan Ellis, Aaron Hardy, Travis Head, Josh Inglis, Spencer Johnson, Glenn Maxwell, Matt Short, Marcus Stoinis, Ashton Turner, and Adam Zampa. And Australia's ODI squad, which is updated now, is Mitchell Marsh, captain, Sean Abbott, Aston Igar, Alex Carey, Pat Cummins, Nathan Ellis, Cameron Green, Aaron Hardy, Josh Hazelwood, Travis Head, Josh Inglis, Spencer Johnson, Manus Labuschagne or Labuschagne, Glenn Maxwell, Tanvir Sangha, Marcus Stoinis, David Warner, and Adam Zampa. So that's just the squad update with regards to Australia. Maybe a positive for South Africa that Mitchell Starc isn't playing. Very good bowler, very quick, can move the ball as well, and the conditions that we will be playing in will probably be conducive to swing. So in certain grounds, so it's maybe a positive from that aspect. But it would be nice if our youngsters are going to get an opportunity to face the best that Australia has to offer. Now, there are a couple of stories that I also want to add to that, because some of the players were speaking to certain news outlets, and I thought that it would be awesome to maybe share that with you guys. So first and foremost, on the West Australia, Perth Scorchers veteran Jason Berendorf admits surprise at Australia's selection for South Africa tour. Perth Scorchers veteran Jason Berendorf admits he was surprised to get the call to play in Australia in T20 series against South Africa later this month. So the left-arm swing bowler has not featured in the international level since the ODI against Pakistan in Lahore last year, and has been out of Australia's T20 fold since July 2021, missing the last two World Cups. So that's obviously you have to subscribe for the full story over here. But it's interesting to see that is the headline that they went with, and that's what they believe that's what he believes that he was surprised with the call up. So nice to see that Australia also are having certain selections in there that are maybe not something that people are very familiar with. There are some selections in Australia side as well that were a surprise too, and maybe they've been pushed because of injury, and maybe they were it happened because they're also trying to get some rest for some of their players leading up to the World Cup. But they aren't necessarily. Australia does have a new, fresh look team that's also in transition. I feel that South Africa is going to be playing against. So I think there is a nice balance of experience and youth, but there's a lot of names there that maybe are not familiar from the last time South Africa played Australia. Now, there's another story here that I would like to read out to you about Glenn Maxwell, because it's good to see how other countries are dealing with certain aspects of the game. Particularly, it's good to see that these countries are also maybe having similar problems like South Africa do in certain cases. But the difference is that they are on a whole different level when it comes to the money that they have and the stability of the union. So this is on Fox Cricket. Country over cash. Maxi makes an Admiral T20 call amid plan to play as long as possible. Australian white ball star Glenn Maxwell has distanced himself from potentially taking over as the next T20 captain, and says he's been keen to extend his international career as long as possible, rather than selling himself as a short form gun for hire. The 34-year-old is feeling primed after a broken leg during his 2023 summer and can't wait to be a part of the T20 League of Australia's White Ball Tour of South Africa starting later this month ahead of the 50 Over World Cup in India that begins in October. Maxwell loomed as an option to skipper those teams, with Western Australian veteran Mitch Marsh getting the nod, while Pat Cummins continues to recover from a wrist injury he suffered in the Ashes. While captaincy isn't on his radar, Maxwell is keen to stay in the Australia setup for as long as possible rather than earning the big bucks in T20 leagues around the world. It's just hard to plan, he says. I'll keep playing as long as possible, as people will have me, until they think that someone is more deserving of my spot, which is fine. Until then, I'll keep plugging along and trying to win games as much as I can. I still feel fit, I still feel young, especially with the role I play. I still try to get the hot spots in the field, so I'm not hiding at all. I think it's nice in my role that you can have someone who's experienced. It's a hard thing for young players to come in and do that role. So we know that he'll be in South Africa's side, and playing against South Africa, obviously in the T20 series. I've got a lot of Scottish that's been built. Okay, that's about from the mistakes I've made in the role, and I think that sort of comes with experiences. Maxwell, who has scored 18th most T20 runs and has the best strike rate of anyone in the top 20. You need that sort of built up resilience. You need to have made those mistakes to be better in the middle order. When you have those young guys that come in, they might have success with their first game, but a couple of games of failure, it's really hard to come back from. Sometimes you just get used to failures as an older person, and you can sort of have the resilience to come back from it. I'll play as long as I'm wanted. The media will point out 2 games back to back when you failed, but they'll discount the previous 18 months of hard work you've done in another format. I think having the resilience and having the backing in the changing room consistently from your teammates and your coaching staff has been one of the things that has been given me confidence going out there, knowing that I've got the confidence behind me. At least I could control my own calendar without having anything pop up at the last minute, he joked. It certainly looks better as far as time-wise, even just missing birthdays, weddings, and life events. I think that appeals to me, but I'm saying that I've still got a fair way to go in my cricket career, I think. So it's probably a bit too early to be thinking about that. Obviously, going to pick T20 competitions over international cricket. There are still some things I really want to tick off in my career. I think if I retired early, I probably wouldn't be doing justice to my younger self. With all these goals and aspirations, there are still a few things I want to tick off. So that's what he has to say, Maxwell. Which I think is a nice way to look at things, to see it from another perspective other than South African perspective, because these players are also going to be facing similar things. So like Maxwell will be facing that similar type of challenges that some players will be facing in the Protea setup. I mean, we spoke often about players wanting to pick T20 cricket or T20 national leagues over playing for their country, perhaps, or whether they are being tempted by that. And we can see that players all around the world are being tempted by the same things. But it's nice to see that international players like Maxwell, etc., are still putting international cricket at the forefront of their career. So that's very interesting to see and to know, because we have this consensus as fans that players are the T20 domestic leagues is kind of ruining the game, and players don't necessarily want to play for their countries anymore. They don't want to play international cricket, and particularly we spoke about Test Arena and how that has been suffering maybe from some of these T20 leagues. So it's good to see that there are players around the world that are also facing this type of dilemmas, and the way they think and the way they go about their approach when it comes to this. So it's interesting to see. There's a lot of those players in that Australia squad list that I don't know much about because I don't follow Australian cricket when it comes to domestic scene. So I see them when I see them play international cricket, and I don't really watch Australia play a lot because I'm not a big fan of them necessarily. Well, I'm not necessarily. I'm not a fan of any of the teams actually, other than South Africa. Um, and then I got my teams that I don't mind watching. So like um, I don't mind watching England and Australia, the Ashes. I enjoy that actually. I enjoy watching the Ashes series. I do like to see who India's playing, because I think that every game that India plays, there's always a intensity attached to those matches. Um, and those are games that I do enjoy watching. And because of obviously the time zones in Australia and in New Zealand, it's not necessarily easy for me to track every single team in the world. So I dedicate my time and my effort into domestic and South African cricket, and that's where my time is spent the majority of the time. So that's all I really care about, to be honest with you. I'm not really worried about how other teams are doing. I mainly think about the Proteas. So yeah, we've got that series coming around the corner. It's hot on our heels at the moment, and we're going to have to be patient, I think, with this transitional phase that South Africa is finding themselves in. Obviously, looking at the squad again, we have a situation over here where there are going to be some new faces seen, most likely, and that is also according to what Rob Walter had to say to us. We played on the previous show, we played his audio file to give you some insight into what was said from his part. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with regards to that. Because on this particular show this week, I'm going to give you guys opportunities to pick your T20 sides and also try to pick your ODI sides for this particular series. And I don't want to see World Cup 11s necessarily on those shows, because I would like to do predictions for the World Cup, obviously closer to the time, once we've got the squad, because otherwise everything is basically just speculation. So I'm going to, on the shows that are coming up this week, I would like to obviously see your 11s for each team, but I don't want to see it on today's show. So let's keep that for the shows coming up this week, because I really want to get into that quite in detail and discuss that with you guys in much more detail, because I like to do those shows where it's interactive, and we get to maybe come to the end of the show. We'll kind of come to a consensus of what our team as a collective is, and what we think as a fan base overall when it comes to that particular match. So I will be doing obviously previews for the show for the series and reviews for the series. So that is something that will definitely happen. I do that for every single series and every game that we do. So it's cool to see that there are going to be a couple of new names that we can see on this list that will probably get an opportunity. And obviously we'll start with the T20 series because that's coming up first, and then we'll obviously move into the ODI teams, etc. Let me get some of your comments. Ikram saying Spencer Johnson's spell in the 100 was fast and accurate. Concede 1 run in 20 balls. So that's giving us a little bit of information on Spencer Johnson that maybe some of us don't know. He isn't a player that I know a lot about, to be honest with you. I will be lying if I say I know a hell of a lot about him. I do know, I'm going to be lying if I'm going to say I know a lot about him. I didn't really watch the American League. He's quite a new player on this. I mean, he is a new player. It's a debut. It will be a debut for him if he gets an opportunity to play. So I'm gonna be lying if I say I know a lot about him. Just like players don't know our domestic players, and they ask who's this player, who's that player when a new player gets onto the scene. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I watched a whole lot of Adelaide Strikers and Los Angeles Knight Riders. So yeah, it's something that I don't know much about. We know that he's a left arm fast medium pacer, according to Cricket Info, and he's 27 years old, and that's about it. When it comes to his performances, his last 10 performances or so, he's played a hell of a lot of T20 cricket, as we know. And he tends to hover around good economy rates. So that's an interesting stat to know, maybe perhaps, because I mean, if I look at his overall stats over here when it comes to T20 cricket, his economy rate is 7.62 in 15 matches. Like, even if you look at he's 27 years old, he's only played 4 first-class games, 6 list A games, and 15 T20 games. So it's a massive selection over there, and a brave selection from Australia. For both teams, the results may not matter that much. It's more a case of getting some combinations right for the World Cup, and also probably seeing new faces. I think that will also be another thing that both sides will be looking at. Both countries probably will be looking at that. We'll be trying to see who are some of the new faces, because Australia is also in need in the white ball arena for some fresh faces, new blood, and to start their transitional phase, just like South Africa are in at the moment. I think South Africa is going to need to kickstart their next phase within their cricket cycle, with quite a few older guys in this team and starting to get into their 30s and their late 30s. So it's going to be the right time now in a series like this, before World Cup, to maybe put some pressure on newbies and new faces and give them an opportunity to show what they are capable of and what they can do against Australia, a team that's competitive and a team that is a good opposition and a good competitor for us. The Proteas getting game time is important, says Akshay, and according to Rob Walter, it's also important for us to see some new combinations and new players. The Rangers says Australia, to be honest, have the luxury of playing more for their country, as they earn a huge sum from Cricket Australia. Stark and Smith are examples of pulling out of the IPL to focus on international cricket. But it's also got to do, I think, with the pull that Cricket Australia has in world cricket. They've got a massive pull, and they hold a high market value within the cricket setup and the cricket fraternity. So, I mean, I guess they have more leverage when it comes to international games than South Africa have. It's almost a guaranteed paycheck when you go play Australia, England, and India. You in those countries, because it's almost most of the time it's certain that you're going to get people to the games, and you're going to get a lot of watch time on TV as well. So they've got a massive pool and leverage. They've got a whole lot of leverage when it comes to cricket and organizing cricket games. We need Markham to do well with the bat, since he is so useful. As a part-timer, says Hadramik. Hunain Daha says, saw Carmelo Roo from South Africa playing in the Major League Cricket. Wonder why he left. Seems very skillful bowler. I guess it's plain and simple with regards to some of these players that have left overseas. South Africa do have a massive talent pool over here in South Africa. And a lot of the times, from what I've seen, is the players that leave are maybe players that are not making the domestic setup. Now, the problem is we have a very big pool of players, and yet we have very few teams in the domestic setup. So there aren't a lot of structures within our cricket. It's not like county cricket that has a whole lot of teams and 2 divisions, where the divisions are huge, with plenty of teams being in Division 1 and Division 2. So when it comes to South African cricket at the moment, the next year after Division 2, there aren't many competitive, well, at least I think, competitive tournaments and things for people to really play in. I think. I mean, club cricket's great in South Africa, but it isn't massive. And what I mean by that is club cricket culture in South Africa is on the decline. It has been on the, let me rather say it has been on the decline for quite some time. It's not necessarily as big in certain parts of the country as it is in others. I know Cape Town has a very massive club cricket culture, but there isn't a lot of money in it. It's a couple of clubs that own the majority of the monopoly. And the amount of people playing in club cricket, the numbers aren't crazy. I mean, you often hear stories of people calling people still on game day, calling up people to come play a quick game for certain teams, or coaches putting together teams on the last minute and looking at their numbers because of commitment. So I know the Joburg club scene, cricket scene, is also quite good and quite competitive. And possibly last season, you would probably say that it was a lot stronger than Cape Town scene, just purely based on what I've seen online and heard from people. It is quite a competitive league in Joburg as well. So, yeah, we need to improve that club cricket system and that the level, so that when you do make the transition into second division cricket or whatever the case may be, I would have liked an extra tier, maybe for under 23s, and have like a sub level division where the younger guys majority of the younger guys that don't make it into Division 2 and Division A, have a place, a competitive area or league for them to compete in and compete against the best in those age groups from under 19 to under 23. I think that would be a great thing to do for South African cricket, locally and domestically. Are we going to see Australian guests coming on the show for the Australia series? I will try my best to do that. I hope Proteas bat Brevis at number 6 or 7 in T20s if he is auditioning for the finishing role. I think a lot of people are hoping that Brevis gets an opportunity in the games. I do think that it's more likely in the T20s than in the ODIs. But it will be interesting to see what happens and how what Rob Walter's approach is going to be in the series, and whether what he says in press conferences, etc., is going to be the same as what we see on the field. So let's see what his decisions will be with regards to the first 11s. If it's up to me, I would give the game time to Temba and Van der Dussen and also give opportunity to Stubbs and Brevis at 5, 6, 7. What should be the aim from this T20 series? Well, the aim, in my opinion, would be to try and find out who our best number 7 batter is. Another thing would be for us to maybe give some opportunities to the next in line players to see if they can be good understudies to the ones that are going to be in the first team, so that if anything happens, if there's a drop in form or if a player is not looking that well, great, that we have adequate replacements on the bench that can come in and perform. Because we had issues at the last T20 World Cup, for example. Was it the last one or the one before that? I can't remember which one it was. But Risa Hendricks came into the team and straight away was a hit. He performed straight from the bat when he got the opportunity. So I think series like this will prepare our players to be ready at any point when there's a chance for them to be able to step up. They are ready for that already because they have some experience under their belt. Hunayn says, in terms of bowling, it's Sasanda versus Lungi for me to see who forms part of the World Cup squad of 15 and who is going to be in reserve. Mitchell van Buren has done well in the last 2 SA emerging matches against Zimbabwe emerging. It will be interesting to see how he does domestically this season and if he will get a call up. Yeah, well, South Africa emerging did play in a match against Zimbabwe today. It was the 4th ODI, I think it was. After obviously going 2-1 up in the series last time around, with a very good bowling performance in that game, which helped them bowl out Zimbabwe almost like very easily. And once again, South Africa pulled off a victory in this particular match as well. So let me just pick that, bring up the scorecard on the screen to show you who performed well, so that you guys can have a look with me. We might as well talk about that as right now. Okay, so SA Emerging won by 6 wickets. Zimbabwe batted first, scored 244 all out. And Wesley Medevere, he got 67. He was the top scorer. And Clive Madande, he got 81. And they were the top scorers for Zimbabwe. And in the bowling department, it was Neelan van Heerden, who is someone that we were talking about on the last show as potential guys that have been impressing over the last couple of seasons. And Peter Krabbe, he got 3 wickets for 37 runs. And Jordan Herman took 3 wickets for 17. Interesting one. So that's awesome to see that he's also adding that into his arsenal. Then when it comes to South Africa emerging with a bat, the game was definitely won by Mitchell van Beeren and Daniel Smith. The pair of them, I watched this game, and the pair of them came in and they were composed. They didn't let the scorecard intimidate them when they came in. And they really performed really well, batting at a decent strike rate, both 109, equaling each other almost. So actually equaling each other out. And it was a very good partnership between the captain and the wicketkeeper. Josh Richards did get a good start, but just couldn't convert this time. And it's again a problem for Josh this tour, because that's one of his best attributes, I think, is his ability to be able to convert. Particularly in domestic cricket, that was one of the best attributes that he's had. But in recent times, he's been struggling to live up to that. So I'm hoping that he can get back to that player again. George van Heerden got an opportunity, who's a former S-19 captain. So that is good to see that also those guys are getting an opportunity and learning curves. Valentine Katim is struggling. He's really struggling on this tour so far to really get big scores. He gets good starts and then he's going out. So I'm hoping that can, and that's been pretty much his career so far when it comes to with the bat. He hasn't necessarily converted really well. He's always gotten good starts and then gets himself out. So I'm hoping that he can change those things. But Mitch van Beeren and Daniel Smith, excellent. Daniel Smith is someone that I'm a fan of. I enjoy watching him bat. So it's good to see that the emerging side with another victory. And the series, of course. They're now 3-1 up in the series and they can't lose. So that is it. So well done to the emerging side. Obviously recovering after their first opening match, because a lot of people, they were getting a lot of slander online about the way they performed in that first game. So for them to come back as strong as they did and dominate Zimbabwe emerging, who have a lot of international players in the side, was a good outing for them. Lorenzo says Conway himself admitted that he was never good and consistent enough in South Africa, and he blames himself for that, and that's why he left. Yes, he's great now, but he wasn't good in our domestic scene. Exactly. And I don't want to bring up a race when it comes to this, but I'm gonna. We will see majority of the players that leave are white players because of ancestral visas, or they've got family, or they were born there and they moved to South Africa, or whatever the case may be, they have the opportunity, if they do not crack it here, to be able to have a fallback plan and way out if they're not getting picked here. And when a lot of them, when they do move over, they have decent careers. Whereas that same luxury isn't given to our players of color in the country. So if they fail, they fail. It's done. It's over for them. What do? They don't get the opportunity to go overseas and better their career, or play for another country. It's not on the cards for them necessarily. So there is a disparity between the two. And obviously, yes, we can say that it's because of transformation, but by that statement that I just made, then it's good that we have transformation, because if these players don't succeed, we need to give them opportunities where they get the opportunity, because they don't have any other option. If they want to play cricket in South Africa and make a living, there isn't any other option for them. They can't leave and go play overseas somewhere and earn double the salary that what people are earning here in South Africa. So playing at the lower level, and in certain cases you can earn more playing at the lower level overseas than you can in our first divisions and second divisions. If there's little to no club cricket, then what happens to the guys who play for top schools but doesn't get contract from the domestic team? That's a big gap and a miss if it's true. And it is true. A lot of our players get lost. And then you'll see situations where they pick other academic routes to success and to the money, rather than picking South Africa as a sport. Because as a South African cricket as a sport, because cricket in South Africa isn't a massive money maker unless you are a superstar, or unless you are really a world-class player necessarily. You're not going to necessarily make a full living playing domestic cricket in South Africa to the degree that other sports have. So, I mean, you have to be a top-tier cricketer in South Africa to be earning decent money. It's not necessarily a sport that is like that. When you go into it after school, you're like in it for the money, because it's definitely not that type of sport. It's long hours. It's a lot of dedication, hard work, for average pay, I would say. So, and club cricket, not necessarily, not all the clubs pay you to play. So people are ultimately having to give up work to play sometimes, or to practice. So even if they do play on the weekends and they are available to maybe play on a Saturday, they work in the week, so they can't necessarily always practice to the degree to get better. They just rock up on the day and play. I've seen that happen at many clubs, where players just rock up and they play. So I've seen some club cricket groups as well, where people are like messaging in the groups and asking, is this person available? Is that person available? We need to field the team on Saturday. Are you available? So it would be nice if all three divisions in club cricket were competitive, so where people could actually dedicate time, go to practices in the week, etc. But you have work and all of those type of things. If it was a little bit more lucrative, and people were actually getting paid playing for club cricket, but then I've heard the argument that takes the traditions of club cricket away, and the feel good social factor away if people are going to get paid to play the sport and club cricket. It takes that, how can I say, it takes that feeling of camaraderie away, kind of. That's in reference to people asking why players leave SA, says Lorenzo. Sometimes they were just not good enough at that stage of their career, and that's exactly true. That's what I was trying to explain. Another thing which I have noticed in South African cricket is that we play a very few domestic games compared to India, and you see Indian domestic goes on for 9 months. Yes, we do. It's a very short season, and it's changed a little bit. It's with the Division 1 and Division 2. Daniel Smith, if you become serious about his play, he can become a very, very good player. I remember the talk around Daniel Smith when he was in the under-19 setup. As a 17, 16, 18-year-old, he was talked about a hell of a lot in the school scene and in the under-19 team. A lot of people were talking about this kid when he was coming through. He's now at Western Province, and he had a decent first season. So let's see how he continues that, and if he can continuously grow as time goes on. A good tour for him, I think. SA tour. I mean, it's an emerging tour for him. So let's see if he can build on that and become one of the main guys in the team when it comes to Western Province. I would like to see how Herman goes in the second full season. Batters usually struggle after the first season as teams get to know them. Hope he does well. Yes, and in recent times, Herman has been struggling a little bit and not necessarily getting great scores in SA20, etc. He had a decent SA20, but he was struggling a bit in certain games. But he had a very good domestic season in South African cricket. And I think that this is another big season for him. And we'll see how he performs at the Warriors this time around. It's going to be very interesting to see if he can improve on or maybe even equal what he did last season. I mean, when he gets going, he's an extraordinary cricketer to watch. His technique, his ability, his braveness. He does get through spells sometimes when he gets a bit defensive to get him, especially when he's not very confident or he hasn't necessarily gone through a good spell. But I like the mentality of always wanting to improve and always wanting to learn. Jordan is an amazing cricketer and an amazing person as well. That I'm hoping that he has a very, very good career in the future. I honestly do. You've seen him on our shows and the conversations we've had with him and how he presents himself. I would like to see more when it comes to him, and obviously I hope this season is going to be equally as rewarding for him as it was last season. When do you think this target and transformation thing can get over? Will we see it happening in our lifetime? I'm hoping that we will. I think once we see clear improvements, once we see clear results on it working, for example, once we see more players of color coming through the system at a high level, I think that's when we can start thinking about maybe reducing the targets and start selecting fully on merit, like they did in rugby. I mean, rugby, it's not even a conversation in rugby. Transformation is so embedded in the culture of giving players the right opportunities at the right stages in their career, right through the school levels and lower, that it's almost embedded within the South African cricket already. They don't even have to think about transformation anymore because of the way they've improved things and setups and how they've improved school rugby as well, with giving the right opportunities at the right time and the right support structures. I think that's something that's lacking in South African cricket for players of color, because it's such a wealthy man's sport or a wealthy players' sport. I shouldn't be saying man's only, but man and women's sport. It's a very expensive sport, and what happens with regards to cricket in South Africa is that, or in South Africa, for example, is that majority of the poverty and monetary issues that are happening in South Africa is amongst the black and the colored community, ultimately. So the amount of money it costs to be able to get yourself equipment and to be able to travel even to cricket matches, to spend time for hours on end at the field, to get the khaki whites and your cleats and buying a helmet, buying pads, buying a bat, buying a ball, all of those things, ball box, etc., pads, everything. It's expensive to play cricket, and it's very difficult for players that are maybe not sponsored or don't have financial aid to play the sport. And I think that's something that we need to make, if we have an opportunity, we must always try to make that easier for players. We must try to improve the amount of resources that are made available. Also, we don't necessarily have a lot of facilities in South Africa where nets are just open for people to play. You know, like rugby, you can go down to your local field, your local school field, and most likely you can play. When you go to your local schools to want to play cricket, the nets are locked up because there's things that you can steal at the cricket nets. So it's a bit, and also a lot of groundsmen, etc. They have turf nets, which is only maybe because probably the top schools. They don't want any person just to be playing on those pitches and damaging the pitches. So cricket is not as accessible in South Africa as other sports. You can't, like I said, you can't just go to the local nets and just play. You know, so it is something that we maybe need to look into when it comes to exposure to the sport. Kudos to South African players and team to kudos to South African players and team to competitive and be our top team, as they don't only have a deal with targets but also very few domestic games and no club cricket. Wow. What do you think Australia is trying to get out of their T20 tour? Don't see many ODI players in the T20 squad. I guess this time. Khalid, I remember you being a big fan of current DOC Enoch McQuaid. Do you think Enoch is to be partly to blame for the collision between the New Zealand and SA20? I do not think that he is completely to blame for it, because the SA20 was in the works, I think, before he took over the job, I think. Give me this. Yeah, so 30 June 2022, they appointed Enoch as coach. So the amount of time that he had to, as a DOC, before the inaugural competition, it wasn't much time. So those negotiations and contracts would have been set up already, I think, before Enoch took over as DOC. So I don't think he's completely to blame or to blame for this particular clash. South Africa was desperate, and I don't think necessarily he agrees. To be honest with you, if I had to ask him, having had conversations with him on here plenty of times and interviewed him, I've never got the vibe that he's felt that this T20 leagues are. I don't want to speak for him, so that's why I'd like to obviously get him on the show. But me personally, if I'm going to give my own opinion, I don't think he was completely to blame for this. As you can see, every single article that was brought out with regards to this particular instance was the CEO spoke about it. A lot of people have actually interviewed the DOC about this particular incident. And when he took over, it was a couple of months before the inaugural competition. So I mean, he had like a half a year before the inaugural competition kicked off. So it's an interesting one, because this tournament is important. Don't you think that they did speak to New Zealand? New Zealand said no. So they did speak to New Zealand to ask them if they can change the dates for the tour and push it back or push it forward, and New Zealand said no. So that's actually what happened, if I'm going to talk about the facts. So yeah. Aruna says, at what place should DB bat? I think at number 4. What's your opinion? So in the future, I would like to see him bat number 3 or 4. For now, I'd like to see him bat at 7, so that he can. I think it will be a stress-free position for him. I think if they can communicate it in that way with him, at least. You see, even if they communicate it with him at 3 or 4, the pressure is on automatically just because he's in the top order. But if he's batting at 7, automatically you can give him a different type of message than you have to give him when he bats at 3 and 4, especially when the team's in trouble. You can tell Dewald, go out there, enjoy yourself, and be free, be yourself, and ease your way into international cricket. Get familiar with the pitches you play on, get familiar with the opposition, get familiar with your surroundings, with your teammates, and he can really honestly display his game and play stress-free and learn on the job. So I think it really takes a lot of pressure off him early on while he integrates into international cricket. That's why I think that 7 would be a great spot. 6, 7 would be a great spot for him right now, coming into the team, especially with such little experience domestically. He hasn't necessarily played a lot of, let's say, and T20 games in the local South African circuit, other than SA20s and those big tournaments. Even in international leagues, the IPL barely played him, but in SA20 he played quite a bit, but didn't play all the games. In the local arena, he hasn't played a lot in South Africa. So he's still quite fairly new to professional cricket, you could say, even though he's been in the professional circuit for 2 years now. So we need to be patient with Dewald Brevis. We spoke to the Titans coach also about his plans with Dewald, and he explained it 100% in an exclusive interview on this channel. So go and check what he had to say about Dewald. Talking about Docker and his role, how do you see his performance as a DRC? From what I've seen, I've been happy with him, and I'm surprised that a lot of people criticize him because there's a clear plan and structure that he's been putting in with regards to the coaches that he selected. I think that the emerging coach, the Ikson 19 coach, the women's side, what he's done for the women's game, the appointments he's made there and the moves he's made there, the mentality and mindset of wanting to be the best, making sure that there's plans in place for not only this World Cup, but for the next World Cup that's in South Africa. So I do think that there's a vision that I haven't necessarily seen before. Graham Smith was very tunnel focused, in my opinion, very nearsighted when it came to DOC. It didn't seem to me that he had the future in mind. He had the now, the present more on his mind than the future, where I think that Enoch looks into the future more than only about the now. And I think that he's dealt with the difficulties that we face so far quite well. He hasn't. He's also someone that I can see, because he's just from what I've gotten with interviews from him, is that he's a strategy systems thinker, and he places 5-year, 4-year, 3-year plans in place. He puts plans in place for the future, and I like that. At least there's a direction forward, that we know that we're going in a direction. I mean, I think the main thing, the dropping of the selection panel and allowing the coaches to be more heavily involved with selection, was one thing that I thought was a great move. I think another move is selecting Shukri Conrad and Rob Walter, splitting the coaching roles. That's another move that I think was inventive and futuristic. Even though I don't necessarily, I thought it would be fine to have one coach to do both. Having the both of them with two minds thinking about it, having two coaches thinking about it will be able to really give us a little bit more people to obviously bounce ideas off. And they're very two different coaches with a very common, but they have some commonalities between them with regards to their vision for South Africa. And yeah, I will try to get him on the show sometime. He's a very busy man. It's difficult to to get him on a show because I'm really, yeah, I have to find the perfect time because he's very busy because he obviously kind of has to deal with a hell of a lot when it comes to men's, women's under 19 teams, etc. So he's actually it's a very difficult job, a DOC job. We actually did a show on this channel, I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, about what the description of a DOC is and what their roles are and what we expect from a DOC. I think the title of that particular show was "What Do We Expect from from a Director of Cricket." Um, so that is something that we will try and do. I don't think we've had Rob on the show. No, we haven't yet. Still trying to sort that out. I have asked for him a couple of times, and I haven't gotten a um, yeah, I haven't gotten commitment on the CSA side of a day because Rob's been traveling a lot with the team and been very busy prepping. So I fully understand why I haven't got an opportunity to talk to him yet, because it's been back to back things happening. From SA it was um, to from SA it was, but we've done exclusive interviews with him for Cricket Fanatics magazine. Writers have gotten in contact. He's had chances to maybe talk for interviews, for written interviews, but to come on a video show at that particular time when we do the show is the problem. I don't think the problem for me at the moment is not necessarily getting the interview. It's more getting the interview at a time that is live for you guys because I want you guys to be able to ask questions. It's pointless me doing an interview, and it's not pointless. I mean, you'll get a lot out of it if I'm asking the questions because I'm quite comfortable doing interviews and asking questions and asking maybe the right questions sometimes. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. But when it comes to this channel, the what we do differently to anywhere else, possibly in the world, is we give the fans an opportunity to ask our guests questions, and we show it on the screen, and we allow you to ask questions. So, unfortunately, the daily show is at 7 o'clock, and sometimes it's a difficult time to get guests on. So I will try my best. I have had Enoch, for example, on the show before, um, a couple of times, so you guys can go look at what he has to say and the way he thinks about the game. It's on this channel. It's evergreen content, guys. Content that will give you guys information for years to come. It's not necessarily something that you just have to watch when it came out and then you get no value from it. It's something you can read, you can listen to down the line and still get something out of it because it's all about his systems, his thinking, his vision for South African cricket. So you guys can go look at that and see what he said and see if he's living up to those things. I mean, it's all on the channel over here for you guys to consume. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to please smash the like button on your way out, but also subscribe to Cricket Fanatics magazine. Click the notification bell also for all future videos. And we're on the road to 4,000 subscribers, so we're very close. We need like 50 to get there. So please go ahead and subscribe and get your friends and family that are South African cricket lovers to also subscribe. And also download the latest issue of Cricket Fanatics magazine monthly and subscribe to it as well. Every issue is 100% free, straight to your inbox every month. The link is on the screen as well as in the description. And help out the channel by becoming a patron today. It's how we keep everything going over here at Cricket Fanatics. If you want more shows, more interviews, us to get better equipment, etc., to take this show to the next level, then you guys can help us out. It's all in your hands, ultimately, if you guys want to help us get to our goals and our dreams that we want to achieve here at Cricket Fanatics magazine. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another daily show. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of your evening. See you guys very, very soon. Peace out.